Let me tell you something strange about silence in the digital age. We live in a world where everything is shared. Breakfasts, birthdays, breakdowns, smiles polished through filters, and pain disguised as quotes. It's a constant stream, loud, colorful, never-ending, but somewhere in that noise, there are people who don't speak. They scroll quietly. They observe deeply. They exist, invisibly. You might know one. Maybe you are one. They don't post selfies. They don't announce opinions. They don't chase hearts or thumbs. And still, they're always watching, listening, thinking. And that raises the question everyone wonders but rarely asks. Why? Why would someone choose to stay silent when the whole world seems desperate to be seen? Why would anyone turn down the constant applause of likes and validation? Most people assume, they're just shy or they don't care. But that's not the truth. Not even close. There's a deeper psychology behind that silence. Something raw, something powerful, a quiet rebellion against the need to perform. Because whether we admit it or not, social media has changed what it means to exist. We've turned living into displaying, moments into metrics, attention into currency, and yet the silent ones, they resist that pull. They don't crave the spotlight. They don't need to be heard to feel real. For them, silence isn't emptiness, it's control. It's the power to decide what the world doesn't get to know. They understand something most people don't. That the loudest voices aren't always the most awake, and that the real meaning of life isn't found in comments or captions, but in what stays unshared. In a culture obsessed with visibility, their silence becomes a kind of strength. It's not indifference. It's freedom. Because while everyone else is performing, they're observing. While everyone else is shouting for validation, they're learning the beauty of being unseen. Maybe the ones who stay silent online aren't avoiding the world. Maybe they're just living more of it. Here's the thing about connection in the digital age. It feels real, but often it isn't. Every like, every heart, every fleeting comment, they mimic closeness, but they don't create it. They create the illusion of being seen. Psychologists call it performative connection, when we confuse visibility for intimacy. When the validation of strangers starts feeling like belonging, and that's where the silent ones quietly step aside. They see through the performance. They notice the patterns. How people share not to express, but to be seen expressing. How emotions online become currency. How the loudest sadness gets the most empathy, and the most dramatic happiness gets the most love. They recognize that social media doesn't mirror who we are. It mirrors who we want others to think we are. And that realization changes everything. Because once you see the stage for what it is, the filters, the rehearsed captions, the highlight reels stitched together to look like real life, you start to crave silence. You start to crave moments that aren't broadcasted, feelings that don't need to be converted into words, and experiences that don't need proof to feel real. That's why many who stay silent online aren't disconnected. They're disillusioned. They've realized that constant exposure doesn't equal connection. It often replaces it. They understand that attention is not affection, and followers aren't friends. That 1,000 views can still leave you feeling unseen, and so they retreat. Not out of fear, but out of preservation. Because when everything becomes public, what remains private starts to feel sacred. And they guard that sacredness quietly, like a flicker of truth in a world drowning in noise. They're not rejecting the world, they're just refusing to lose themselves in it. So while everyone else scrolls endlessly for meaning, they sit still, and they feel it. Their silence isn't emptiness. It's a form of awareness, a subtle reminder that not every connection needs Wi-Fi. Some just need presence. Silence is often misunderstood. People mistake it for emptiness, disinterest, even weakness. But in psychology, silence often means the opposite. It means awareness. It means control. See, those who stay silent, especially in a world addicted to noise, are often the ones who've learned something most people never do, that words can be armor, but silence can be strength. When you don't rush to express everything, you start to observe more deeply. You begin to see the spaces between things, the pause before a reaction, the motive behind a smile, the truth behind someone's eyes. Psychologists call this high self-monitoring, the ability to understand your own emotions before you project them. It's the mark of emotional intelligence, the quiet power of people who think before they speak, and feel before they perform. In a digital culture that rewards immediacy, silence feels like rebellion. When everyone else is posting to prove they exist, the silent ones are learning to exist without proof. Their value isn't tied to algorithms or applause. It's internal, anchored in who they are, not in how they appear. And that's why silence often makes people uncomfortable. Because when someone doesn't broadcast themselves, they can't be easily defined. You can't categorize what you can't measure. You can't label what doesn't speak. So silence becomes mystery. And mystery is power. But it's not just power over others, and it's power over yourself. Because when you learn to stay silent, you're teaching your mind that not every thought deserves an audience, and not every feeling deserves validation. You start to separate who you are from how you're perceived, and that separation is where peace lives. For the silent ones, the world may move slower, but it moves deeper. They listen longer, they think harder, they understand faster. Because while everyone else is trying to be heard, they're trying to understand. And understanding, not expression, is what truly connects us as human beings. So if you ever wonder why some people don't post, don't assume they're disconnected. Maybe they're just connected in a way to something quieter, truer, and infinitely more real. There's a strange pressure that comes with being seen all the time. It starts slowly and you share a little, people react, and suddenly the attention feels good, so you share more. You post your thoughts, your face, your meals, your moods, and before you even realize it, your life starts to revolve around the idea of being witnessed. But there's a hidden cost to that visibility, a quiet erosion that happens beneath the surface. Every time you post, you hand over a small piece of yourself. Your joy, your pain, your authenticity, they all become content. And once they're content, they stop belonging to you. Psychologists call this performative self-presentation. It means you start living for an audience, not out of deceit, but out of habit. You stop asking, what do I feel? And start asking, what will they think? It's subtle, but it changes everything. Your emotions become filtered. Your experiences become curated. Even your happiness starts to depend on numbers, likes, comments, shares, tiny bursts of digital approval that decide how you feel about yourself. And yet, the more visible you become, the less real you feel. Because when everything is shared, nothing feels sacred anymore. Your private world, the one place you could truly be yourself, slowly disappears. That's why silence feels so powerful to some people. Because it's the last thing that belongs entirely to them. In silence, there's no audience, no approval to chase, no algorithm to please. Just you, raw, unedited, unseen. It's not that silent people reject connection. They reject performance. They've understood that constant exposure doesn't create intimacy. It dilutes it. Being visible to everyone often means being known by no one. And so they protect their privacy, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Because they know that mystery is not emptiness, nor its preservation. In a world that measures worth by visibility, their invisibility becomes their sanctuary. They don't post less because they have less to say. They post less because they've already learned that some things lose their meaning when spoken out loud. People who stay silent on social media are often the ones who notice everything. While others speak to be heard, they stay quiet, to see. They see the words between the lines, the expressions hidden behind filters, the exhaustion in someone's smile that the world scrolls past without a second thought. Their silence isn't empty, it's aware. They've learned that real understanding doesn't come from reacting fast. It comes from watching longer. And so they observe, not to judge, not to gossip, but to understand what people reveal when they think no one's really paying attention. Because in a world obsessed with talking, observation has become an act of rebellion. They study human nature quietly, how people seek validation, how loneliness hides behind jokes, how confidence online can be a mask for fear. This is why they rarely post. They've already seen what happens when everyone tries to be seen. They know the cycle too well. Share, compare, regret, repeat. Instead, they choose to step back. Not because they don't care, but because they care too much. Their minds are tuned differently. They think before they speak. They reflect before they act. And when they finally decide to share something, it carries weight. Every word has intention. Every silence has meaning. Psychologically, these people score high in interoceptive awareness, the ability to sense what's happening within themselves. They understand their own emotions, their boundaries, their energy. And that awareness gives them clarity. Clarity that constant noise can't provide. They are the watchers in the crowd, the quiet thinkers in a room full of voices. And because they spend so much time listening, they often end up understanding people better than anyone else ever could. It's why their presence feels grounding. You feel calm around them, you feel seen, even if they barely say a word, because deep down, you can sense it. They don't need to prove they understand. They just do. And sometimes the most powerful people in the room are the ones who never try to take the spotlight at all. Silence. For most people, it feels heavy, awkward even. But for them, it feels like home. It's not because they're avoiding the world. It's because in silence, they finally feel like themselves. When there's no need to perform, no notifications buzzing for attention, no endless scroll of opinions to drown in, they can breathe. Because silence doesn't demand anything. It just is. Psychologically, this comfort with silence comes from low social dependency, a trait that allows them to find satisfaction from within, instead of chasing it outside. They've learned that peace isn't found in a crowded room, or in the approval of strangers. It's found in moments so quiet you can hear your own heartbeat again. That's why they don't rush to fill the gaps in conversation. They've made peace with pauses, with space, with stillness. And ironically, that's what makes people curious about them. Because in a world addicted to noise, quiet people feel mysterious, almost magnetic. It's not manipulation. It's presence. It's the kind of energy that says, I don't need to be seen to exist. Silence for them is not a lack of confidence. It's a form of control. It's knowing that you don't have to react to everything. That you can choose what deserves your energy and what doesn't. They've seen how easily words can be twisted, how opinions can become prisons. So instead, they speak when it matters. They save their energy for depth, for truth, for meaning. And maybe that's what most people don't understand. Silence isn't emptiness. It's clarity. It's self-respect. It's healing disguised as distance. Because when the noise fades, they can finally listen to their thoughts, to their emotions, to the quiet voice inside that says, you're safe here. That's why they don't need to fill the silence. They are the silence, calm, aware, whole. And once you've found that kind of peace, you stop searching for it in other people's chaos. Silence has a language of its own. You just have to learn how to listen. When someone doesn't post, doesn't react, doesn't explain, it's not always indifference. Sometimes it's wisdom, because silence is rarely empty. It's full of boundaries, of choices, of quiet strength. Psychologists call it communicative silence. It's when a person uses absence instead of presence to send a message. It can mean, I'm protecting my peace. I don't owe the world my energy. Or simply, I'm still here, just not available for noise. When they stay silent online, they're not disappearing. They're reclaiming space. They're saying, I exist beyond the scroll, beyond validation, beyond performance. Their silence communicates self-control because not everything deserves a response. Not every emotion needs an audience, and the truth is, people who are truly at peace don't need to announce it. They know who they are, and that quiet confidence becomes its own kind of power. Think about it. When someone doesn't rush to defend themselves, doesn't join every argument, doesn't explain their absence, and you feel their presence even more. That's the paradox of silence. It makes you louder, more mysterious, more real, because words can be manipulated, but energy, never. Their calmness says, I've outgrown the need to prove. Their stillness says, I trust time to reveal what truth can't. And so, while everyone else is shouting into the void, they're simply observing, learning, evolving. They know that sometimes the loudest move you can make is no move at all. So when they go quiet, don't mistake it for weakness. It's self-mastery. It's the discipline of knowing when to speak and when to simply be. Because in a world addicted to noise, their silence isn't a retreat. It's a revolution. Most people think solitude is loneliness. They see someone alone and assume something's missing. But what they don't realize is that solitude can be a form of strength most people will never know. Because to sit with yourself, with no music, no scrolling, no distractions, takes courage. It means facing your thoughts without running. It means meeting the version of yourself you've been avoiding. That's not weakness. That's emotional endurance. Psychologists say that solitude helps you regulate your emotions, build self-awareness, and restore cognitive balance. But beyond science, there's something spiritual about it. When the world is screaming and you choose quiet, you start to hear things differently. Not just sounds, but meanings. You begin to notice the tone behind your own thoughts. You see how much of your anxiety wasn't yours. It was borrowed from people who never sat still. You start to realize peace isn't passive. It's something you have to protect. And the more you protect it, the stronger it makes you. Because when you can stand alone in silence, you stop needing the noise of others to remind you who you are. You no longer post for validation. You no longer speak just to fill the air. You no longer fear being misunderstood, because you've learned to understand yourself. And that's the quiet kind of power most people never reach. Their solitude becomes their sanctuary, a place where they aren't being watched, but are finally seen by themselves. It's where healing happens, where clarity returns, where peace stops being a concept and becomes a feeling that lives in your bones. So yes, they stay silent, but not because they've given up, because they've leveled up. They've learned that you don't find yourself in noise. You find yourself in stillness, and that's the kind of strength you can't fake. You start to notice something about people who stay silent online. They see things the rest of us scroll past. When you're not busy posting, you start observing. You start feeling what others only skim. The quiet ones catch the pauses in people's voices, the flicker in their eyes when they say, "I'm fine." They notice how happiness online feels rehearsed, how everyone's smiling, but no one's really present. Because when you step back from the noise, you begin to see the patterns underneath it, the constant comparison, the quiet competition, the hidden ache behind every perfect moment. The truth is, silence sharpens the soul. When you stop performing, you start perceiving. You start hearing the small details, the hum beneath the chaos, the humanity hidden between the pixels. It's why the quiet ones seem distant. They're not disconnected. They're just tuned to a different frequency. They feel life deeply, see meaning where others see noise, and carry a calmness that unsettles those still addicted to the rush. Maybe that's the gift of silence. It gives you new eyes. Eyes that see truth even in a world built on pretending. Maybe silence was never a weakness. Maybe it was your mind's way of healing, of retreating from a world that speaks too loudly and says too little. You were never too quiet. You were just tired of speaking into noise, of watching people confuse validation with connection, attention with meaning, and noise with life. You realized you didn't need to be seen to exist. That peace doesn't come from applause, no, it comes from alignment. From knowing that even when you say nothing, you still matter. Because silence doesn't mean absence. It means presence of thought, of awareness, of truth. And those who understand that walk through the world differently. Not chasing attention, but living with intention. So if you're one of the quiet ones, well, don't let the world convince you to be louder. You don't owe your voice to an algorithm. You owe it to your peace. Stay soft. Stay unseen. Stay true, because in a world that never stops talking, your silence might just be the loudest thing left.